Welcome everybody. My name is Tim Mangan. My company's Team Merchant Technologies. We're generally known for doing stuff with AppD, particularly training of your customers. So in 2019, we've announced we're going to change our programming a little bit, and we're going to be doing a mixed training class now. It's going to be both AppD and MSIX together in a single class. So we'll teach people the basics of how to go through that. So as you have customers in various parts of Europe that may be interested in such a thing, they can certainly work with us. We're interested in getting some additional classes put onto the calendar in various places within Europe. So if you have folks interested, have them contact us. With me today is Priya.
Hello. I've joined Tim for the first time and I hope I don't ruin his presentations. Okay, I've come here for mainly basically give you an overview of what vendors are operating in the MSIX space and what Microsoft has done, what they have not done. So why vendors are important, and if you have any problem in your applications where Microsoft as it is, the built-in applications don't work for you, then which vendor you can go to and how can they help you with the applications. So I'll be covering that middle part of the vendor offerings, and I'll hand it over to Tim back.
Okay. So we're going to do this in 3 parts here today. So I'll start talking about basics about what is MSIX. Priya will be looking at some of the things that the different tool vendors are doing and showing you where they fit in. And at the end, I'll come back and talk a little bit about why we really need the help from these tool vendors with what Microsoft is doing. All right, so what is MSIX? Okay, at one point, one part of it would be simply to replace the old MSI. That's a horrible old technology. It was originally put together in the 1990s. Pretty much the only thing that's happened to it from the beginning is the addition of custom actions, which were both a blessing and quite frankly a curse. I think it's much more of a curse for the IT pro who's trying to deal with these packages, because they're really create a little bit of a black box that you really don't know what goes on during that custom action, and you want to understand exactly what that installer is doing to your systems. But the idea with MSIX from Microsoft's perspective, and the reason to go to it over MSI, is that not only do you get these nice clean installs, but a very clean uninstall. So that after the thing is removed, everything completely goes away, and it's built into the platform to do that. So in terms of the stability of Windows in the long run, to be able to bring these packages in and take them out, we'll have a much more stable environment. Now, in addition to replacing the MSI, which is Microsoft's intent, that the MSI would eventually go away, it's also going to have an impact on other products. So application virtualization is certainly one. Whether or not MSIX will be able to replace all of application virtualization is up for question. My answer is I don't think it's ever going to do that. And we'll see some of the reasons why I'm here. But Microsoft AppD, VMware ThinApp, other third-party things like the message and the like, those are going to be heavily impacted by this. I think a lot of the things that we're doing with AppD today will eventually be able to do with MSIX. And then there's still going to be a need for some of these things to stick around. Now, some of them, like VMware ThinApp, I got to tell you, I got to believe, I have not heard anything from VMware, but I got to believe that thing is got to be on a fairly short lifespan. I can't see VMware wanting to put a lot of money into it. We haven't seen a lot of development put into that, so I think that one is a little bit at risk. The Microsoft AppD, they are not actively doing any new development on that product anymore. They are continuing to maintain it. It's part of the operating system, so it's going to be with us for a very, very long time. But they're not enhancing it. They're simply fixing it when they need to. And the application layering front, I think that is probably more of a direct impact by MSIX. MSIX, one of the way we can view it is it's Microsoft's answer to layering. It's really their solution. It's a different format, but they're really trying to do the same type of thing. It's typical Microsoft, Let other people go out and innovate, and then they will copy and provide something that's less, but it's sort of built into the platform. In the Citrix app layering, particularly, I'll say that the ELM section, the user layer piece for the Citrix app layering, I think that's the part that probably ends up really getting hurt the most by this and probably ends up going away. The boot time layering and using the appliance, using that as a way to build your image, I think that absolutely makes sense. And what I would expect Citrix to do, not that I've heard anything from them on this, but what I expect them to do is to just simply build in the ability to take these MSIXs in as part of that layering process. And there probably doesn't need to be a second process to that. It's not like you're doing with the capture of an MSI install. You should be able to just take that MSIX and convert it into the proper format. User environment management, I think there's going to be some impacts in there as well. So this is going to change the way that data is getting created and redirected. We already have a redirector that will be built into this platform, and so you may not need that secondary product to do that. That's to be seen, right? With Microsoft's implementation currently, they're actually doing the data redirection completely wrong. So right now we absolutely need to have a second piece. But eventually I'm hoping we'll fix up the PSF and make it a little more flexible so that we can move data where we want to. There we go. All right, so when I break out the MSIX, I like to talk about it into three different pieces. One is we've got this format thing. I already talked about that a little bit here. It is that replacement for the MSI. The format itself is very much like AppX and AppV's format. We have the ability to have the end user do some customization. So the IT pro will be able to take the package from the vendor and then create their own modification package. And the way Microsoft described the modification package originally was all you have to do is write a little bit of JSON and be able to customize the package up. It's not really going to work that way. Your customization package is going to be probably a capture with files and registry settings that you create and add that onto the main package. But the concept here is that the changes that you make one time, as the vendor updates their software, if they're releasing things to you in MSIX format, those things should just work out of the box again in the next version. Kind of questionable how well that working is. Applications go from one version to another. A lot of times those changes will just work right over, but usually there's a couple of other things you're also going to want to look at and maybe have to tweak because they're probably adding some new features along the way themselves. The third piece is this runtime piece. So this is built into the operating system itself. So in Windows 10, 1809 and above, as well as in Server 2019, when those things, the ISOs actually get released out to us, that will have the runtime piece of MSIX built into the platform. When those things run, they're going to run in a container. Okay? We're talking about the container technology that they use on the server. It's also there on the desktop. And so these applications are completely isolated from each other. That's the way AppX works today as well. The container that we'll be running in will be a little more flexible than the one that you have in AppX, but it still is going to be this container, and that's going to impact the way that we handle these applications and the things that we have to do to them. One thing we are getting with the MSIX is that we will have the ability to have things elevated. So Microsoft had this intermediate technology called Centennial, Windows Bridges for something or other, right? Was the official name eventually. And that was sort of a first generation of this. It allowed us to take some of the old Win32 and .NET applications and kind of combine them and run in a container. But one of the huge problems with Centennial was that there was just too much that was blocked out. One of them was that elevation. And elevation comes into some weird places as well. So COM objects, you can have in-process and out-of-process COM objects. Out-of-process COM objects are normally elevated. And so none of those things worked. And that's why Centennial fell flat, because we didn't have that type of support. But we will have that in the runtime here. The idea of running in the container, though, is that this is to keep the end users, as they're running the application, from drawing outside the lines. Okay, they cannot mess up the application. They cannot change any of the files that are inside that package. It's absolutely forbidden. Okay, so it's always going to work again, is the idea. All right, so as we look at the format definitions, Microsoft, when they created AppE version 5, they actually built upon what was brand new at that point, being built at the same time, which was the AppX format. So these are the universal apps that we have today. And AppE simply uses the format of AppX with its extension. When they did Centennial, they did the same approach. It was AppX plus a very small extension to it. In the case of MSIX, it's another extension in there, and it is in size somewhere in between the Centennial and the AppE. And Microsoft is building this over a period of time, and right now I would probably draw this line as being about here. And by the time Microsoft is finished building the technology, it'll be out here somewhere. But we really don't know where. Okay, the roadmap that we have is very, very basic, and Microsoft themselves really don't know how far they're going to have to go out. You know, they're thinking very simple, we do very simple things, and what they're finding, I think, very quickly is that applications are complex, and they need a bunch of more things that they hadn't been planning on. So they're working on extending what they're going to include. Okay. Now, if we look at where we were a year ago with Microsoft, we really had two things going on. You could be doing with traditional applications, but Microsoft loves to use the word legacy now for those, right? The stuff that you're deploying today in reality. And we have these delivery methods. And pretty much if you were doing the traditional stuff, you stuck with the traditional delivery methods. But if you wanted to use the new modern delivery methods, well, you can really only work with these new modern style applications. And one of the things that we've seen over the course of this year between releases from Microsoft and announcements that happened at Ignite in September is they're filling this in. They're extending Config Manager to be able to handle the new stuff, and they're also extending Intune and the Store for Business to handle the old stuff. So they're allowing you to be able to deliver everything from whichever way you want to go. So if you're dealing with on-site config man today and you want to stay that way, you'll be able to extend out and do the new modern types of applications as well. But if you want to go to a cloud-based delivery and modern management, you'll be able to do that at that point. That's the idea. Hopefully they'll fill this in a little bit more over time as well. So one of the things that Microsoft loves to say in terms of MSIX and why enterprises should be looking at MSIX, and I think they've been very successful with getting enterprises excited about this so far, is this. Yeah, this is their story about all of the things that an enterprise goes through to deploy applications and to migrate from one version of an operating system to another. And you go through all of these steps, and it's way too much work, and we want to simplify that. I agree with them up to that point in their statement, and then they follow that up with, and MSIX makes this all go away. And that's the point that I disagree with Microsoft. Okay. I believe a lot of this is already gone away. This is the process you went through to go from Windows XP to Windows 7. You had to touch every single application in that process. And that's because a lot broke in the app compat model. To go from Windows 7 to Windows 10, I talk to customers and they're thinking about this model going in, and I'm trying to convince them they really don't need to do this. To go from 7 to 10, or from one version of 10 to another, you should be worried about what are the changes in the operating system that I have to worry about, and how do I operationalize that? Right? What things do I need to do to lock down that operating system and get rid of the crap I don't need? What things do I need to do to allow the help desk to be effective? Those are the things you need to be spending your time on. This isn't one. The app compat between 7 and 10, and one version of 10 and another, is very, very, very good. So yeah, you want to do a little bit of testing, but it's probably even just spot testing. And just let the problems roll out as you start rolling out the new platforms and applications, and deal with them then. you'll spend a lot less time in the process. So we really shouldn't be doing this as a general practice as we go from one deployment to another. So Microsoft has a release strategy associated with MSIX. The first version comes out with 1809, and it's very, very basic. It's an initial support. Quite frankly, it's really there more for the software vendors that they want to get into MSIX. The limitations that are in there are things that the software vendors themselves can fix in their code rather than depend on things like the PSF that we'll be talking about later on. In the next releases, they have things that they're going to add that they've talked about here. I've added them on the screen here. We know they're going to improve, they can improve this to the PSF. Virtual services, so services don't work inside containers right now. Some of the OS extensibilities like fonts. If you had something like AutoCAD Electrical, it has some very special fonts that need to get delivered with that. They just don't work today, so that's something that they have on their roadmap at some point. We don't know where, but at some point. They want to make the containers a little more flexible, so take care of some of the rigidity that's in there to help with apps as they need to integrate with things either with the operating system or with other applications. The stuff with SCCM and Intune, they've actually already announced a lot of that stuff now, and so they have some good support in there. The application and driver relationships is an important one to talk about. So apps that have drivers in them basically will need, the driver part will need to go away. Microsoft's idea at this point is the driver piece is something that should be handled through the normal Windows driver update mechanism. So that when the app goes in, you only have the app pieces, but that will trigger your Windows update or the equivalent of WSUS to say, oh, I need the driver for that package as well. And that's going to be their approach. I don't think they're going to change that approach. They also have this idea of deploying to Windows 7. And this is primarily for the ISVs. They want the ISVs to go into this new format, but the ISVs are often not just delivering to the enterprise, they're also delivering to consumers. And consumers basically have a PC and they leave that operating system on until the PC dies and then they get a new one with the new OS. So they've been demanding that they have a way to also deploy these things into the older operating systems. So what they're doing is they've committed to doing something there. The way it sounds from the description is they're going to take the MSIX format and basically blow it down on the system as if it were installed. So you think about a package capture, you take the MSI, you install it, you capture the differences. They're just going to blow that back down the same way. So none of the container stuff would be there in that instance. We also have absolutely no idea on the timing of that. And every time they ask me about it, they ask me, do you think we should do this? I said, well, if you're going to do it, you got to commit to it now and do it right away, because this becomes less and less important in 2019 and 2020. I also talked about conversion as a service. I think that's way off, but the idea is that they have some VMs up on Azure, and if you had something, you could just kind of use that as a way to do the packaging, so you didn't have to create your own VM to do that. Yeah. Phase 3, which is really what happens after, I have absolutely no clue on there. So when Microsoft built AppV 5, they went through a 5-year process of building that thing. And after they finished, they thought that they were going to be done. It took about 2 years for that to really be production ready. And I think we're going to see that type of window happen here after RS7, is that there's still going to be a need to do some things. Like the packages we get from software vendors in MSIX format are going to be very consumable for you as soon as the vendor releases them. Those are going to be great. You take those and you run with it. But the other stuff that you need to repackage yourself, because it's an old crappy version that the vendor isn't going to update, or you need to stay on that version, or it's those in-house applications, those are the ones that will take a little longer before we're really going to be production ready for this. So again, they have these 3 pillars that they're using in terms of their push out to the market. The one is to the developers, and they really need to get the developers on board to commit to this. The developers right now, I think, are a little bit shy. They were told go to AppX, and they found out they couldn't build enterprise apps with AppX. They were told go to Centennial, and they found out Centennial didn't work. Now they're being told go to MSIX, And, they're a little shell-shocked, quite frankly, and we'll have to see how much support they get. If they don't get the support from the vendors on this part, I think the rest of it becomes much more difficult for all of us. They're also working very well with tool partners. They're only doing the basics, and they want these partners to come in and pick up and enhance things to make it better and more usable for you. And for the IT pros, they're saying, hey, you're going to repackage your own packages, and you may require these fix-ups that we'll talk about. In fact, that Priya is going to talk about now.
Hi everyone. Okay, so I'm talking about MSIX today, and specifically the partner part of it, because I work for one of the partners, and I did visit Redmond sometimes to get insight into what is MSIX and how partners can help. So we all know if Microsoft releases something, most of the people will adopt it because they are the boss. But vendors need something to be on the edge, to be on the winning edge of the business. So most of these vendors are doing something special around MSIX to help the customers. Otherwise, why will customers buy them? That's the first question. So I've been to other vendor conferences as well. So I gathered some. I can give you a nutshell summary in 20 minutes of what vendors are doing. And if you have a problem which Microsoft can't solve, which vendor can solve it for you? So I'll have a sponsored session later in the evening, 3:30, which is just about my company. But right now I'll talk about everybody, and I'll keep it alphabetical so that it's not a biased presentation. So if I go to the first one. Okay. So these are all the vendors who have committed to doing something around MSIX. So in last Ignite, I think last month we had Ignite, and Andrew Clinic, he presented that all these vendors have partnered with Microsoft to do something around MSIX. But out of these, if we categorize right now today, they might do it 1 year down the line. But today, if you want to see vendor offerings, then these are the vendors who have come up with MSIX generation package. So if they generate a package which is compliant with MSIX. So these 5 vendors are going with it right now. They have done something to generate an MSIX format package. Out of which, if you again take a subset of this, these are the vendors who are doing something to discover whether your apps are compatible with MSIX or not. Because you can't really put any old, like Tim said, XP apps. I work with XP apps most of my time, my colleagues work here. It's very difficult. XP to Windows 10, XP to Windows 7, they have broken a lot of compatibility issues. So you can't really put your app there and expect lovely MSIX package. It's not going to happen. More than half of the times it's not going to happen. So that's the reason these vendors have built in some techniques to detect if your MSIX package will be generated or not. They'll highlight what problems you have, OSF compatibility issues, what browser compatibility issues you have, all these things. They'll tell you about it, whether it's okay to convert it or not. Out of these, if you go again narrow down to another vendor set, these are the vendors. Of course, Microsoft is one of the vendors. I'm treating them equal to other vendors, although they are not. So if you see this circle, there are Advanced Installer and Cloud House who are going a step further and giving you an option to solve your problems, solve compatibility problems, and they are using PSF framework, which Microsoft has delivered, Product Package Support Framework. So we'll have a look at these 3 vendors, Advanced Installer, Cloud House, and Flexera, because they have done something more than just generating an MSIX package. So you'll have an idea of if you have a problem with your app, which vendor to go to. So first let's see Microsoft, what have they done? They have made, just like App Sequencer, they have made an MSIX packager, which does everything. It's basically snapshotting technique. Initially you say it takes a snapshot, and then it does some additional things and generates an MSIX package. Now, I would really like, how many of you have seen an MSIX packager tool here? Oh, no one. So you want a demo? Yeah. I wanted to save my time, but yeah, I'll really go for a demo. Before that, we'll do a small slide. So, of course, Tim is an expert, so he analyzes everything. He's been doing it for years.
We will be demoing it during the master class this afternoon.
Right. So, in the interest of time, I'll skip it for now. Master classes, he'll be demoing it. If not, I have it on my laptop. You can come grab me anytime. I'll be here. So, to me, these are 2 main things. Look, I'm a developer, and for me, if the product is good, then what is special in the product that I want to find out? To me, 2 things stand out. One is the modification package, which I think is a cool concept. It's a really good concept. They don't want your package to be, if you want to update, everybody wants to update their versions. They don't want your package to be rebuilt when you want to update it. So they have given this concept of a modification package, saying if you have a custom setting, if you have something which is not really core to your product, you update it as a separate package. So that is the modification package, which I don't think it was there earlier. And second thing, which I have been doing for 8 years, this kind of stuff, PSF framework. So I'll give you an idea of what is PSF framework, because in my company we do this and we have been doing it for years. It is nothing but hacking. If you see in real simple terms, all it does is all it does is injecting a DLL and hooking APIs in before. So your application shoots some APIs, create call, read call, write call. What it does is it injects a DLL so that whenever your application shoots any API call to Windows, before seeing the operating system, they grab it, they take control of the API and do some modification. So that is called a package support framework. But because Microsoft is delivered it, we can't call it hacking, it's not good. So it is the PSF framework, but it's a really clever trick and it can solve most of the compatibility problems. And I've been working on it, so I know that for sure it solves compatibility problems. We will go through that in a little more detail. So the demo, I'll skip it for now, we might have a lot of time. And you can get into the master classes if you want a demo of that. So this is behind the scenes. So when I was running a packager, I wanted to know what is special, how is this MSIX package getting generated. So I ran API Monitor, which is a really good tool, and it showed me exactly which APIs they are calling. It's behind the scenes, it is Apex APIs. They are calling some Apex interface to create a package, do all these things. So if you run your MSIX packaging tool, before clicking on the create button, just run your API Monitor. You will see that it is using APIs which Apex had used already. So it is definitely an enhancement over Apex. Internally, if you use these APIs, you'll be able to generate your MSIX package basically. So that was a small event track. And now, okay, this is the question. If you want, say, your applications on old platforms, 100% sure method of how do you bring it to Windows 10? Anybody has an answer? What is the best way to get your app to Windows 10? Okay. Sorry?
Call you one.
That's a good answer. Yeah, it is just fix your code. That is the best way to make your app work. Go to your developer, ask him to fix the code, and he or she, of course girls can also develop really good packages, so they can do it. But there are many problems because of which their hands are gone. So first main important problem is they don't have the code. Many old customers, they just have a master image which some EXEs is burned into it. They don't know where that code repository is, or even if it existed, because that app was made 20 years back, 30 years back. What can you do when you don't have a code? You can't really throw your production application. That's where they need these kind of techniques, like the PSF framework technique. Luckily, if say example, they have a code base, they maintained it, then they don't have developers anymore. Maybe he's enjoying his beach holidays in Greece somewhere, some retired developer, because this was long back. So, oh yeah, I know. So they don't have developers. Again, having code, not having expertise who can do it is again taking a risk. If you ask a new person to do it, he will take either long time to do it, or he'll just do it something and then you're not sure what he has done. So that's another challenge. Third one is, think you have code and you have a developer who can do it, but you don't have time. I've seen customers who tell me that it will take them 1,000 days just to do the regression testing if they change the code. It will take them a team to work for 5 years to get it production ready. There are very complicated applications. You just don't have time, resources, and fourth option is they don't have money to do it. They can't just go for rewriting the application. That would have been the best thing, but unfortunately it's not in the real life. So for these things, for these kind of things, you need something like this. Now I'll categorize it as two different approaches. One is static change. Say few fixes can be made with static change. Say they have changed extension of help files. Changing an extension isn't a big thing. You just go and rename it. Or if there is some characteristic, some DLL option which is blocking it from moving to Windows 10, then you can use a P header modification editor or change it there. That is static change. But that comes with a cost. Those changes can't be applied to all kind of problems, and those changes will change your checksum. Some people, checksum is very important for some files. You can't just change the application on the disk. They don't want to do that. For these challenges, again, it takes testing cycles as well, which is the third thing. For these challenges, this runtime changes are what will fix the problem without having to go through these in detail. So the runtime changes, again, this is a package support framework. Like I said, I'll give a small preview of this. What this does is, this is an EXE which launches your application internally, but when the application is running, once your process has been created, it injects a DLL in the running process. So it is not a static change, it is a runtime change, and that DLL will have your code which is to be executed for, say you have a write file call. You don't want to write to C drive, it's not allowed anymore. You want to write it to some other location. Then you hook into the write API, NTDLL API, and this DLL will have your code which you want to execute. Then you change the path of the file or do something. So it's basically, it is like API hooking to change some parameters before it goes to the operating system. So that's what we call it as the DLL injection, runtime fix-ups. Fix-ups which Microsoft has come up with for PSF framework, they are nothing but hooks into, it's like extended code if you say. The code is already there in the application, you can't modify the code. So all you do is patch it at the injection level, at a DLL level. That's how your code will be executed before the actual operating system sees the call. So that is what is in the runtime changes, but problem with this is it has massive debugging effort. You have to narrow down the problem, track using your tools, API Monitor, Procmon, whichever you want. Then you'll be able to figure out what exactly is doing that nasty thing, which crashes your application. And it takes a long time. And I should say debugging is 80% of the effort, and coding to fix it is hardly 20%. Most of the times that adds up. I think my colleagues will agree here. We have been debugging for hours and hours, and the fix turns out to be 2-minute fix. That's it. So debugging is massive. Skill set needed for that, we really get to train. So 5 years back, I wasn't able to fix anything because this needs real good learning. Now that I know these problems, I've seen them, I'll be able to think about it a little, a little proactively. So debugging, again, tools are not readily available. Microsoft is providing a free repository for these kind of fix-ups, but it is limited right now, and they are heavily depending on the community to build the fix-ups, community and the partner vendors. So somewhere down the line, it might be there, and then you'll have a ready-made fix-up. Till then, there are really not many tools available. Again, risk of messing it up. So sometimes even, it happens. When you try to fix something else down the line breaks. So there is a risk, but again, a calculated risk, because you want to get it working, and once you have certain things in mind, you can maybe fine-tune it to fix it properly. We'll cover these more in detail in my session later about the PSF specifically. Now, it's never easy to to wash your past sins. That's the thing, because when, again, technology evolves, mistakes are a part. Otherwise, developers won't get a job if there were no bugs. So there are issues. When Microsoft released this custom actions, I might be in the high school actually, but I have heard that it was a cool feature back then. But now we know custom actions is just, your scripts are running without your control. People are just writing a script to install it. Now they want to cut it immediately. That may not happen because there are so many applications which depend on these prerequisites. Before installing, you want to set up a service, you want to set up a driver, like Tim was mentioning. These things, it's not easy to go away with, because customers come now saying, with MSIX, we really don't have an option to have these prerequisites in place. Now, that is something which people will have a problem with. They can't really convert their apps to MSIX immediately. So all these previous things which were done in a wrong way, they want to fix it now, but it takes time and it takes more tooling to do that. That's where the vendors will help. So if we see, I'll talk about these 3 vendors very quickly. First is alphabetically again. It is Advanced Installer. Advanced Installer have, again, they generate an MSIX package, but what I really like in their solution is, they have something called a tracing, there is a tracing shim which Microsoft released as part of the GitHub repo is there. What it does is, it will inspect your application and log all the API calls which the app is making and where it might fail. So what Advanced Installer did is, they are building that part inbuilt in their application, in their tool, and they are highlighting that, this create file actually looks like this will not work. They are highlighting this create file might cause a problem. So that is a more detailed analysis of what might cause a problem, and they are importing the fix-ups automatically. So they'll be using community fix-ups, and I think they are doing their own fix-ups as well. They might be doing it in future. So that will be a quick way of analyzing your application, checking what exactly is the problem, and then just importing that particular fix-up. Now, other things which they are doing are, they have a launcher, which is again just like PSF launcher. They have their own launcher, I guess. And they are covering these handling of the app data issues, then uninstalling old MSIs, migrating your old app data. So these are some cool features. Even with modification package, they have a tool around where you can easily see the modification package contents and modify it. So these are some things which Advanced Installer can help you for. And I have a demo, but I'll skip it. But this will be in the slides. So when I share the slides, you'll be able to see the demo. Sorry. Now comes the CloudHouse part. In CloudHouse again, they have been doing it for 8 years. They have been doing since, I think even Microsoft didn't even think about these problems. And that's the main selling point for CloudHouse. They sell compatibility fix-ups. So 8 years of fix-ups, and they have just like AppWeek, they have a virtualization engine, but this engine has all these hundreds of fix-ups built into it. Okay, that's my company, by the way. I'm not allowed to say that, but I'm inclined to say that. Okay, so we have these fix-ups built into our product. And again, you don't have to, and it has automatic detection. So when you're, VB6 has these, we have seen these patterns with VB6 or .NET 1 or JInitiator 1.3, really old Java, Oracle, .NET versions. And we have automated it in the product. So the product has detection mechanism and fix-ups automatically embedded. So you'll not see the difference. Most of your apps, you'll not see what is the problem, because once you generate it, it already has all the detection and fix-ups embedded in it. So the virtualization engine handles it. So that is one of the best points. Other thing is, detecting the anomalies, automatic fix-ups, scripting support. Now, most of the time, customers come to us saying, we have this prerequisite. We need to install this service or driver, and our app doesn't work without that. So there is a provision in CloudHouse to package an application and trigger your pre-install, post-install, or pre-run and post-run scripts. If you are stuck on that and you can't move to Windows 10, that is the way forward. You can do it using the scripting mechanism. And the fourth point here is API and event fix-ups. Now, API fix-ups, Microsoft is giving as part of PSF. There are not many right now. There are some 19 file system APIs, some 9 registry APIs, some DLL APIs and process. But in future they might have it. CloudHouse has it today. They have all the API fix-ups, and they have event fix-ups as well, which can't be done using PSF framework. And many issues like VB6 I've personally seen, they can't be fixed with simple API hooking. It's not possible, because the kind of nasty exceptions they throw, that's really difficult to hook at the API level. So they have operating system event fix-ups as well, which acts really well in favor of such real tricky, sticky applications. And the last point is granular API hooking. Now, what I mean by granular hooking is, in current Git repo, if you see Microsoft's Git repository, they have all these fix-ups, but they are saying hook create file in whichever DLL you find it in. It will be in kernel-32 DLL, it will be in kernel-based DLL, and to my surprise, there was an Oracle DLL which had create process, all these APIs. Now, when you say a generic fix-up, it will hook into all the DLLs. Signature is the same, but it crashes. That particular hooking actually crashes the application. So that's where I see this is slightly, you might not find it for 99% of the applications again. But for those really tricky ones, especially the Oracle ones I know, if you hook across all the DLLs, it will not work. So CloudHouse has a fine-tuned DLL hooking. Actually the virtualization engine itself hooks functions just for that DLL which is to be hooked, not for all the DLLs, and not for all the child processes as well. Many times if you try to hook child processes, it gives a side effect. So we just fine-tune it to hook only the problematic ones, not the good ones. And then Oracle issue I've discussed. Sorry, I'm running out of time, Tim. This is the last vendor, which is Lexera. How many of you, this is, I think most of the IT pros use Lexera, yeah. Admin Studio is really good, and I've tried my hands recently. So you might be knowing, they are doing things around MSIX, but in general, they have these anomaly detection, which is really good. They are discovering around 60 OS compatibility issues and 25 browser compatibility issues. Any problems with your DOM objects, any problem with your HTML files, JavaScript, they detect it. Even with your operating system compatibility issues, they have something called transformations. That is, again, it comes as a static fix, not a runtime fix. Statically, they have transformations which can fix your well, few of those 60 incompatibilities and at least highlight it or fix it, one of these two. So that's really good in Admin Studio. And then they are checking MSIX packages to browse if they have any driver or service related dependencies. In that case, they will highlight that this is not really easily convertible to MSIX. So that's a good sign if you want to use this package. And then recently they have acquired this company, Secunia. And and they are doing this vulnerability scan as well. So security scan of your applications, which I find is very useful. I'll quickly hand it over to him now.
Okay. All right, thank you, Priya. So I need 3 volunteers, Rob, Carrie, and Thorsten, who's not paying any attention. Come on up front. What I wanted to do is to be able to provide you kind of a little bit of a more real-world understanding of why we need these fix-ups. So here's what we're going to do. Rob, you're going to be, I know this is going to be hard for you, a developer. You're going to be us for an introvert. Come on over here. Okay. Now, Rob, you have a package.
Yeah.
In fact, you have a very big package.
I know.
Yeah, you gotta get in the camera right here. Okay? So you are very, very proud of your package.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
And you never really want, in fact, you don't understand the concept of after you've done your package and you deliver it out there, that anyone's gonna wanna do anything to it.
Of course
right?
not. It's
Press the
perfect.
button. Okay? That's how you feel about your package, right?
I understand.
Okay.
Try again.
Hands off. Okay?
Hands off.
And in fact, it turns out that inside your package, there are some things that really should be hands off, but there are some things that, you know, it really should be able to be touched. But from your perspective, yeah.
Hands off. This sounds like quacking.
Uh-oh. All right, fine, we'll just deal with one. Okay. Thorsten, you're going to be the IT pro.
No, that's unwritten.
Yes, you are the IT pro. You are Jesus. Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
You are the god of IT. And you do all sorts of things to control the lives of millions and millions. It's play acting. This play acting. To control the lives of millions and millions of. And you also have a package. Now, I will say.
Whoa, that's a good one.
Okay. Your package is not as big as his.
That's right.
So that's okay, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's like that.
Okay.
Don't
And Carrie, you get to play the role of the end user.
Thank you.
And although you like to wreak havoc, we're going to try to control you with MSIX and keep your changes to be just the things that you should get. But from your perspective, that's the wrong one. That's his. Ari, that's yours. Here we go. Perfect. All right. So here's what happens. All right, calm down over there.
Has a bit of a delay, I believe.
Yeah, a little bit. So as a developer, you've got all of these pieces in here. You deliver both data and settings as part of your package. Mr. IT Pro here really needs to customize your package. He needs to change some of those settings and maybe some of that data and deliver that out. And the way that MSIX is doing that is that you're going to have your MSIX package, and then he's going to create what they refer to as a modification package. There we go. And this is the MSIX packaging tool, by the way. So he'd go in here, he'd create this modification package. And in that modification package, he put in various files and registry things as part of that. And that would get delivered and added as an add-on. Oop, I didn't want that. Here. And so from the end user perspective, what they see is they've got this application, right? And we go into the application, they also got delivered what would be called an add-on, and that is the modification package. Now, one of the things Microsoft has done, and they haven't told us how we do this yet, but we will be able, I was very concerned that the end user Okay, the end user would be able to hit that uninstall button and take away all of your customizations,
That works.
which you do not want to have happen, right? Those are the pieces that make the app work in your environment. So Microsoft is going to allow us to disable that on a per package basis. They just haven't told us how yet. So that's the plan, right? So we'll be able to take your package with your package and give it to the end user, and they will not be able to change any of those things, except the things that you want them to change. But that's going to require you to do some work. Because as I mentioned, everything in the package is not touchable. But using the PSF, using these standard fix-ups, like there's a standard fix-up called file redirection, or there's another one that's called copy file. And so what you're going to end up having to do is to be able to say, oh, for these particular file pattern matching things here, these should get copied out of the package into a safe area that is writable, and any attempt to read or write should then get redirected to that. Right? That's the idea. Now, right now, the PSF, unfortunately, doesn't actually support that. You have fix-ups in here that would allow us to copy a file out, and we have fix-ups that would allow you to redirect the reads and writes. But it's not a single fix-up that does both, and the effect is you get one or the other. So that's some future work we're going to have to see happen inside the toolkit. The other thing that's happening with this, so the PSF is open source, so it's up on GitHub, and they are looking for community contributions to this, so that folks will be able to go in and help improve these things and make the tooling a little bit better. So I've submitted in a branch, which is a pretty major change to it, to help with the detection of what are the problems we have. So kind of like what Priya was talking about here, within the framework itself, we'll have some ability to do a trace. So what I did is they've got a trace that requires you to use debug view, and it's just horrible. You can't really figure out what's going on. So I created a monitoring tool called PSF Monitor, and it looks a little bit like a Procmon type of interface. So we'll be able to go in and you package it up, you run the application, you see where the problems are from there. Oh, it's calling a create file with this thing and it's failing. Okay, that's something I need to fix up. And so you add it into your JSON XML. Why JSON? I don't understand. There's nothing cloud about this. It should have been XML. It's JSON. And then you'll put that and you'll put it in with your modification package. You'll deliver those pieces to the end user. You'll keep the end user from hitting it, and we all win. All right. Thank you very much. This is just an example. Unfortunately, if you really want to do fancy stuff with the PSF beyond what Microsoft is directly providing, you've got to be a developer because you've got to go into C++ to do this stuff yourself. So this is why your average IT pro probably isn't going to go here, right? That's why we need the tool vendors to help us out. That's why we need better improvements to the shims that Microsoft is providing automatically, so that you can just use these pieces and not have to go into something like this to write your own code. Okay. So MSIX, as I've been talking about it out in the world this last 6 months, is the IT end users are just overly excited about this, okay? They are just so excited, it's ridiculous. They think that they're going to be able to take everything, you know, they look at the demos from Microsoft, like, oh yeah, I just go click, 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 and boom, I got my package, here I go deploy it, oh, isn't it wonderful? Let me tell you, it's not so easy. In fact, even the demos that Microsoft is doing, they actually show packaging up 2 applications. One was Notepad++, the other was VLC. Their VLC demo works on screen when they do it. It doesn't work. Okay? The only reason their VLC demo works is they do go through a capture, and on that same VM, without clearing out, because during the capture they did a full install of the thing, they then run it and they bring in the package and deploy it and run the package, and it magically works. Okay? If I clean that machine out without VLC locally installed, that package, very specifically, does not work. It crashes on launch unless you start doing some fix-ups. So at any rate, my message that I hope that you can also help carry out to your customers, that right now for this year, you don't want to be overly excited about this stuff yet. Give it some time, let it bake, let them complete the process. Otherwise, you're going to end up, going to bed with someone who's wearing a strange hat. I don't know. But I want to get your customers from being overly excited about it into being mildly enthusiastic. It is a good technology to start getting into. It's so much easier to understand the problems you're going to see 2 or 3 years from now if you start playing around with this stuff now, and so you understand the technology while all the warts are fully open to you, and you understand the techniques of how do I deal with that type of problem now. Once you start learning those techniques now, when we get into a better system, there's still going to be problems with apps, and you're still going to have to use some of those techniques. So now's the time to start getting to understand the technology and the limitations and what we'll be able to do and not do in the future. In the end, I expect we'll do a bunch of stuff with MSIX, especially if they get the vendors on board. And then we're still going to be deploying applications through the other traditional methods that we've been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years. So nothing completely goes away. So I think that is it. Thank you.